Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishnah Yisukah, Parak Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishnah Ches, Mishnah 8. Okay. Hamakara Sukasai Bashapudin, Baruch Hasamita. A person has a sukkah. He's got his four walls up. And he now puts on top of the sukkah shapudin. Shapudin means iron spits. Can you use that for schach?
No.
Why not? Well, first, actually, these are more because it doesn't grow from the ground. Shpud may not necessarily be a kli, but it says it doesn't grow from the ground, right? Metal doesn't grow from the ground, right? So those shpudin that you put up there, not kosher schach, right? Baruches hamita. Baruches hamita, they translate as sideboards of a bed. You've got this rectangular bed, and these are the sideboards. Now, these sideboards we're talking about here actually have two legs connected to it. So it's like kind of ready to be put together. And now the sideboard is made out of wood, right? The legs are made out of wood. Grows from the ground. So what should be wrong with it? It's a kli. It's considered a kli. Considered a utensil. It's susceptible to tuma. If it could be makap, because it could be made into a bed. It's got enough of it to be made into a bed. And therefore, it's considered a kli. It's considered a utensil. And therefore, it is susceptible to tuma. So that's another reason why you cannot use it for schach. But this is what this person did. He laid out, now he didn't lay out the entire cover with spits. He put a couple of spits down. He put a couple of bed sides of the bed down on top. So Mishna says like this. Im yesh revach beinehan kabaisam. If there's enough space in between these spits, or let's keep it simple. If there's enough space in between the spits that we say there's an equal amount of space that you'll fill up with kosher schach to the area that is covered by the unkosher schach, kshera, it's kosher. So just put this together. You put up these things on top of your sukkah, they're not kosher schach, but there's also space in between. You're going to fill up that space with kosher schach. So the wording of the Mishnah is, if there's enough space between them, that means if the total area that you're going to fill in with kosher schach is the same amount the total area of the non-kosher schach, the spits, the side post, the sides of the bed, it's kosher. 50-50 is kosher. But that's not the halacha.
No.
It has to be more than 50-50. The amount of area that's going to be filled with kosher schach has to be more than a half. Once it's more than a half, you're good to go. So even though you have so much of your sukkah actually covered with non-kosher schach, the fact that the majority of the area is kosher schach, and you're good to go. Okay, so again, you've got these spits that are laid out. In between them, you've got the space. You're filling up the space with the kosher schach. As long as the total area of kosher schach is more than the area covered by the non-kosher schach, you are it's kosher. Okay, next, brand new case. Okay, Richie, here's your case you've been talking about the whole time now for the past couple of days or weeks. Okay, new case. You've got this pile of hay, big pile of hay. Basically, what you do is you hollow out a pile of hay to make a sukkah. Kind of like your houses that you had pictures of yesterday.
No.
A little bit stronger, those. Got this pile of hay, and you basically pull out stuff from the bottom. You create a space, right? And now I say, I have a sukkah, right? I have a schach, right? Schach is hay, grows from the ground. That's something about the tuma. Could this be a kosher sukkah? Says the Mishnah, ain't a sukkah. It's not a sukkah. Interesting wording. Doesn't say puzzle. It says ain't a sukkah. It's not a sukkah. But what's the issue here? The issue is the following. The issue is that we've mentioned before that your schach has to be created or put down, right? It has to be laid, let's call it, in a state of being kosher schach. Now, part of being kosher schach, as we learned previously, was that when you put it down to be a shade for something. Doesn't have to necessarily be put down for the mitzvah, but it has to be put down for the purposes of shading an area. Well, before you hollowed out the hole in the haystack, right? There was no hole, there was no area, right? So although theoretically you could say it's covering itself, but that's not enough. Schach has to be covering an area, has to be covering an open area. If it's covering an open area, it's schach. In this case, there was no open area beforehand. So when you go ahead and you just pull out some of the hay to make a living area, what was the schach that was laid before is still there as it was before. And we learned previously, if you have unkosher schach, and then you just take away the invalidation, that doesn't make your schach kosher. You got to make the schach and not from that which was already made in an invalidated state. You just took away the invalidation. You have to put down kosher schach. The schach here, or what's going to be, or what you want to be your schach, was laid down before. Before it wasn't covered, it was not a covering for any kind of open area for living space. And therefore, now that you created your living space, all you did was take away the invalidation from the schach. So therefore, it's not good. Says the Bartanur a very interesting thing. He says like this. Let's say originally, this pile of hay, there was some open space on the bottom. As a matter of fact, you had actually, let's make sure I get this right. Right. It had a halal tefach, b'meshach shiva. Imagine you have an open area, a tefach high, and it's 7 tefachim as 7 tefachim. With 7 by 7 with a tefach high. Now, as we said before, the minimum area of a sukkah is 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim. Once you have an open space of a tefach high, so now you basically have an open area. That means that your hay on top, right? It was covering over an open area. Yeah. Now, at that point of time, the sukkah wasn't kosher. Why? Because there's a minimum height to a sukkah too. Uh-huh. The minimum height of a sukkah is 10 tefachim. But that's not a problem with the schach. That's a problem with the walls. That's a problem with the area of the sukkah. But the schach was laid down as covering over this area. Let's just say that's how you did it. You basically had this open area, and when you put down the schach, you put down the schach in a way that it had this little open area, and that you meant for this to cover or shade that open area. It's just that, and that open area has the dimensions of a sukkah, just doesn't have the height of the sukkah, which means you really don't have. So what happens then if I pull out some hay, and now I create myself a height of 10 tefachim? Now I have walls of 10 tefachim. Says Bartanura, kosher. It's kosher. Because the schach was not invalid. It wasn't a validation of the schach. The schach was covering an area. The problem is it wasn't a big enough area to be a kosher sukkah. Now I created the area. Now I created the walls. That's not a problem of tas v'lo mina asay. That's not a problem of it being invalid and then making it valid. The problem of being invalid and just taking away the invalidation is by schach. That's it. As we said, when the Torah says the word sukkah, the Torah means the schach. So if you need schach, that means you need it to shade over an area. So in this case, the schach shaded over the area. The problem was not the schach, the problem was the area. And now I fixed the area, I have a kosher sukkah. So in this case of the Mishnah, the issue was where there was no open area originally. There was no open space. Mm-hmm. So the top of the haystack wasn't covering over anything. At that point, that what you want to call a covering was there in an invalid state. Now, when you pull, if you want to pull out afterwards, you're so fine. You're now creating an open space, but the schach that was laid there originally was laid there in an invalid form, and you're not fixing that. You're just going and taking away the invalidation. That doesn't allow the sukkah to become kosher. You'd have to literally lift it up again, lift up the hay on top and put it back down. If you did that, then and for schach, then it would be kosher. But just as is, just by pulling out and hollowing out a hole in it, that's not good enough. Have a wonderful day, wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, everybody.